My friends, I've come here today because as Prime Minister of Israel, I feel a profound obligation to speak to you about an issue that could well threaten the survival of my country and the future of my people: Iran's quest for nuclear weapons.
Our guest has been following more than just foreign policy his entire life, but has become personally involved in learning what life is like for those on the front lines of a global war. American businessman, political activist, founder of Fries Associates. Welcome Foster Fries to MidPoint today. Foster, thank you so much for being here.
Well, it's an honor to chat with you. I'm glad to be on.
It's a pleasure. I wanted to start out right away with what has happened today. Certainly that has everybody discussing. Benjamin Netanyahu speaks before Congress. Do you think he hit the nail on the head? Or perhaps, as some have indicated already, maybe he didn't go far enough?
Well, I'm a huge Bibi Netanyahu fan. I was met with him in a restaurant a few years back and was supposed to meet with him on my recent trip several weeks ago, but the 50 rockets that got launched from Gaza precluded our luncheon with him. But I think what he said needs to be said by our president, and I wish he would alert us to what we're facing in terms of the what the best term is, global jihadist movement. Americans get confused. Is our enemy ISIS? Is it Al-Qaeda? Is it Taliban? Is it the people that took out our friends in Yemen? Is it Al-Shabaab who says shoot up them all? So I think by calling the enemy the global jihadist movement, it puts it into context, and I think that's kind of what he's talking about, although he used the term militant Islam. And I think the more we can get rid of the term Islam, it emphasizes that in confronting the global jihadist movement, we're trying to help Muslims. And so anytime you use Islam, fascist Islam, it gets too many people with knots in their stomach, and I think we should avoid that term, as we should avoid war on terror. Terror is not an enemy, for crying out loud. It's a technique. In World War II, we didn't declare war on blitzkriegs. So I think Bibi Netanyahu hit it on the head, and it's something that every American now has a better chance of understanding for those that would listen to a speech. Unfortunately, everybody doesn't hear it. But what puzzles me is why would anybody oppose what he has to say? I don't get it.
Well, is it just foolish and naive, then, on the part of those who see all the evidence against Iran? Certainly Benjamin Netanyahu brought a lot of it to the fore today. But we have seen a lot. We have heard a lot. We here on this program have even talked about what is being billed as a secret parallel nuclear program that Iran is building right now, with tunnels, centrifuges, and everything they possibly can to get past whatever the United States might want. So with all that, it would have to be either naive or ignorant or just plain stupid not to see that this country has absolutely no reason whatsoever to cooperate with us or to do anything to become one of the League of Nations.
Well, you put it so well. Our negotiating skills, I don't think, are the greatest. If you look at trading 5 Taliban activists who are probably back on the battleground pretty soon for one potential deserter, that kind of gives you a clue as to our negotiating skills, doesn't it?
Well, don't we also have to, and again, this is something that I think comes into a linkage here, because we talk about what's happening with Benjamin Netanyahu, but then we realize that Iran is in there. We realize that Al-Qaeda is in there. You just went through a tremendous amount of litany here of all these different people in here, but all these different facets. It all seems to link together, and it seems that sometimes we miss that, don't we?
We sure do, and that's why I'm indebted to Sebastian and Katie Gorka, who are counterterrorism experts for over 20 years. They're the ones from whom I learned that term just last week when I was in Washington, and I had a meeting with Tulsi Gabbard, who's a second-term Democratic congresswoman from Hawaii, in the same conference room with Lindsey Graham, who, as you know, is a pretty conservative South Carolina U.S. Senator. And the two of them are on the exact same wavelength in terms of our current first step should be to arm the Kurds. Now, arming the Kurds and trying to get them to be able to successful in their own country, in their own region, or I should say their region, not country, it would be a helpful, huge step for stopping this global jihadist movement. They're not going to go down to Basra or Anbar province with a lot of enthusiasm, but it'd be very important to arm them, and it's a little bit like the Super Bowl is we want to defeat the global jihadist movement. Well, to do that, you got to play the first game, and that's what the Kurds would be, and then we go after the next step is trying to win the win the next league title by confronting the jihadist movement in other parts.
Okay, I'm going to hold you for a second, the Kurds, because we have to take a break, but we do want to go there because you have been there, you have seen it on the ground, you've watched this, so please hold on a couple of moments. Break, we're back with a trip to where the fiercest fighters in the Middle East reside and how we are constantly failing to help those who can help America win the current war on terror. It's next on MidPoint. Back to work, political activist, American businessman, founder of the Freeze Family Foundation, helping relief and recovery efforts around the world. Foster Freeze joins us here on MidPoint today. Foster, correct me if I'm wrong, but you actually have seen the Kurds in action up close, or you have been in that part of the world to understand a little bit more about what happens there, correct?
A few weeks ago, I went to the Peshmerga camp called Black Tiger, which is on the ISIS front lines in northern Iraq, which is a day after we distributed some blankets to the Yazidis in that same province. And it's tragic. I'm embarrassed, maybe ashamed to be an American to see how we're treating the Kurds. The CNN did a report of a artillery piece that they're firing was made in 1941. They have 25 shells left. They don't have anti-tank weapons. They don't have medical care for where they're wounded. They don't have mechanics to replace broken axles. They don't have night goggles. They moved ISIS out of a region, and they're losing their Peshmerga troops to the booby traps. They don't have the ability to defuse those. And those are all things that we could be giving them. And I mentioned the things that are completely non-lethal, but we are offensive. But we really should be giving them Apache helicopters, tanks, so they could really bloody the nose of ISIS, which would be a very important psychological effort.
Could they really do it, though? I guess that's the point. If you were to give them these weapons, these modern weapons, are they trained for it? Could they use them properly? Because there are a lot of people who would say, we have already seen American tanks fall into the hands of ISIS on a daily basis. We want to be sure that we're not helping to arm those enemies that may come back at us again down the road.
Well, very good point. Excellent point. I met with the vice commander of the Peshmerga, and he told me, quote, Peshmergas have not lost a single bullet. And so we ought to have known from our invasion in the Kuwait effort how many of the Iraqis just cut and run immediately. And we lost, I think, 2 battalions to ISIS. So you and I, as taxpayers, have funded the ISIS tanks. They have 1,250 armored Humvees that you and I paid for. So it's a matter of who you give the arms to, and that's why the American public are so confused, who are the good guys and who are the bad guys. And I've met with a number of Kurds, and everybody who knows the Kurds. Ross Perot has oil interests there. You talk to anybody who has any interaction with the Kurds, they are our friends. They're the only friends we have in the region. I talked to a military officer, U.S., who is embedded in the Peshmerga brigade. Over a period of time, he lost 22 Peshmerga fighters, and he was invited to the funerals, and afterwards the family would come up and say, thank you so much for being here at the service, and I want you to know we keep an American flag in our home. Another fellow, we have a picture of George Bush on our wall. People have to understand that the Kurds are our friends, and we are treating them despicably.
Well,
I could go on and on as to what we're doing to them.
With the couple of minutes we have left here, then, let me focus on that, because people and the experts always tell us, even the military experts, the strategists tell us that the Kurds are the key. You come here and tell us that they don't have the weapons, they don't have the backing, they don't have the support, and that they are our friends, and they are fighting a war right now that in many ways they're winning skirmishes but not winning the battle. How long is it going to be, in your opinion, before the Kurds basically throw up their hands and say, look, America, you don't want to help us? That's fine. We'll go do this. Take your weapons. We'll take care of it. Don't bother with us. No reason for us to be your friends anymore because you don't seem to care if we live or die.
Well, that's not going to help if they did say that, because they're going to fight because they're protecting their land.
It looks like, though, they might be coming close to it, though, because if America doesn't give them the things that they need, looks like there might be a level of frustration that's being reached eventually.
Well, the frustration, it's not going to be frustration, they're going to be decimated. They were only, ISIS was only a few miles from Erbil. Can you imagine if Erbil falls? And then what if ISIS goes into Jordan? We just lost Yemen, for crying out loud. And why aren't people noticing that all of our friends every day are being decimated? And the more friends we lose, the harder it is to eventually confront the global jihadist movement. And the Kurds need to be armed directly. The problem is, everybody thinks it's Turkey. When I was there were trucks flowing back and forth. There were 600 Turkish companies invested in Kurdistan. So that relationship is softening. The problem is our State Department and President Obama have a one country concept for Iraq, and they are very reluctant to arm the Kurds for fear that eventually that will result in an independence movement to split off into a separate country. That's something that's way down the road and something we should not worry about now. We have to help these people. They are our boots in the ground. And why in heaven's name are all our politicians talking about, well, eventually we have to have American boots on the ground, American boots on the ground? We have boots on the ground right now. They're called Kurds. And whenever any Kurd dies, from my point of view, an American dies. And so we just need to go around Baghdad and get the equipment to them directly as much as we possibly can, and then have a air commitment similar to shock and awe that we did when we opened up the Iraqi invasion.
It is a fascinating and a tragic story at the same time. Unfortunately, we are all out of time. Foster, we appreciate you bringing us that perspective from the ground and what we need to do. I thank you so much for your time, and please, good luck in all your efforts around the world.
Thanks so much. Appreciate your help. God bless you.
Take care. There is not one single doubt Israel is America's closest ally in the Middle East. Also, no doubt the current debate over Iran getting nukes has driven a spike between the two. Let's move forward next.